Good evening, everyone. This is a call to order of the Bridgeport Public Schools Facilities and Finance Committee meeting. Today is Monday, May 20th, 2024, and the time is now 6:05 p.m. In accordance, we have committee chair, myself, Akeisha Casimir, Mr. Albert Benahan, Ms. Tahiba Bain, We will recognize board members in attendance. Mr. Sakalovic, Mr. Willie Medina, Mr. Andre Woodson. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes dated March 11th, 2024.
So move from Mr. Benahan.
Moved by Mr. Benahan to accept the minutes. Before I second that, I found an error in the minutes from the last meeting. Did you find that?
No,
No?
please let me know.
Oh, yeah. So, so the heading does not read facilities and finance. It reads construction. I'm sorry, I don't have it up. Do you see it, Mr. Benahan?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we definitely need to change the heading. Everything else was fine.
Yeah.
All the minutes, everything that was written there was fine. It was just the heading should read facilities and finance. So we will make that change, and I'll second to approve pending the change. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next item on the agenda is, excuse me, let me just backtrack. Agenda item number 4 and number 5 will be moved up to agenda item 1 and, agenda item 2 and 3. Mr. Garcia and his team are going to do the report on the new Bassic High School construction update and the Facilities Department Summer Internship Program update, and that is okay with the rest of the board. So the next item on the agenda will be the update on the new Bassic High School construction.
So I brought along Larry Schillen and Michelle Otero from Construction Services. They're going to give you guys a brief update on where we are in terms of the school construction. Good thing is we're on budget, we're on schedule currently, but they will give you the details on that. And then the details on the fact that—
I'm sorry, hold on, Mr. Garcia. I just want to have your undivided attention. I'll just wait until these are passed out. You want to walk back by? Or
No, he's
good?
he's
Oh, you good? Oh, he's here. He's the presenter. Okay.
So Larry
Sorry, go
Schillen
ahead.
from Construction Services. They're going to give you an update on where we are construction-wise and verify that the court is regulation size. So we can't start having tournaments at our new high school. So Larry, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. And I brought you some pictures, just physically you can see where we are in the construction. All the 4 slabs have been poured in the building. The precast has been hung on the west side, the south side, the east side, and half of the north side. The crane will be coming back on Thursday, and we'll finish the north side and a few odds and ends pieces that remain. In another week, we will be putting in the window frames. We'll be doing the upper floor roof replacement beginning on Thursday. And right now, on the Broad Street side, we're putting in the retaining wall which will be for the parking lot on the south to raise the elevation. Because again, the elevation of the building is 2 feet above the 500-year floodplain. There's a requirement of the state that we do that. So again, we got to bring up the elevation to meet that standing. Then also, there will be what they call a dry egress path. If you have a big storm, that you can get out of the site from pedestrian point of view. On the inside of the building, we have put up about 70% of the block. We're in the gym right now, putting up the block and the acoustical block. Throughout the building, the stud walls are being placed. We're running ductwork. In approximately next 3 weeks, the chillers will be installed in the building and the boilers will be installed in the building. We're probably a couple weeks ahead of schedule. We're tracking to be open in August of 2025. The next part of the project, which Michelle can talk about, is the FF&E. We have to go to the state to get approval to bid that phase. And I think she's very close to going to the state. And I can answer any questions.
I will give it to Mr. Benahan first, committee member, Mr. Benahan.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can you explain what is mean in the picture elevator penthouse?
Pardon?
In the picture, there's the elevator penthouse. What does it mean?
Yeah. Again, we've got 2 elevators. One elevator will go to the roof level.
Oh, okay, I thought it was something special.
For maintenance people.
It's for
To get
maintenance.
the
It's
turn
easier
off there.
access.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. And just to clarify, because a lot of people ask that question and people worry about the flood. You know, there's something happens, something bad happens because we close to the beach, stuff like that. So I want you to be in the record and everybody understand that Bassic High School is gonna be safe. Of course, if something bad happened, we got the one gonna be out of the school, you know, the channel, that the commander will send information, of course. But some people, they think something happened on the floor, we're gonna be there, students gonna be there. Of course, we're gonna be out, but
Yeah.
they think the school's gonna be damaged. So can you explain a little bit about what's happened, you know, something's a flood, you know, the school's gonna be safe, you know, it's not gonna be damaged, you know, stuff like that, because, you know, the things go up and down, so.
Again, the school itself is 2 feet above the 500-year floodplain and is very safe. Broad Street, yes, it'll get flooded. And towards the sound, it gets flooded. The park gets flooded. You can see that whenever we get a heavy rain. But again, the school itself is out of it. There is no basement, nothing below the 18 feet level that we're going to be at, that we're at actually now.
And so far, we okay with construction, you know, it's not nothing, I know you say we are update and everything, it's nothing
Yeah.
back, you know, I don't want the construction
Yeah.
to say, we don't have this, we don't have that, we're not gonna stop. So I know building committee, I'll be part of that, you know, we're on top of that.
And if the resiliency project does move forward, then Broad Street will get raised, the park will get raised up, etc. But they're not there yet with all the federal funding and the sign-offs from FEMA that they need.
And it's very clear so that people understand, people, they think Bassic High School, they go Bassic High School, they start like a last year or something like that. This project's coming for years back. you know, when I was a former PTA, so president of Bassic High School, we're talking about 4 or 5 years back.
Yeah.
So we walk in, this is the process, you know, it's not something we start yesterday to this Bassic High School.
The
So people-
project actually started in 2016.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
2016, so people can understand, because people say, oh, why they don't fix another school? You know, it's a process. It's not something from one day we're gonna fix school like that. Like, Ms. Otero said, it's from 2016, we start working with this. So
Yeah.
finally, you know, thank God, the students gonna have something they deserve, you know, it's about time. But no more question, Madam Chair. Thank you, Larry.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Bain,
I don't have any questions.
no question? Okay. I would like the record to reflect that committee member Tahiba Bain has joined the meeting in person, and also board member Jennifer Perez has joined us. The traffic study for the area, was there one done, and what was the result?
We did a traffic study. It was a requirement before. And we met, we got the State Department of Transportation, their sign off. We got the city engineering department sign off, et cetera.
Mr. Benahan, any more questions?
Yes, now you said, interpretation, Madam Chair. Henry, how are they gonna work? Be sure, clear, because people ask questions about the school bus in that area.
Pardon?
The school bus, you know, when the school bus
Yeah.
arrive, you know, to drop and pick up, you know, the kids, they're not gonna block nobody, houses and street.
They'll come in. Michelle,
I know. She's in the back, I know she wants to speak, I know she's real.
So I it's Larry's baby. I let Larry run the show. I'm Michelle Otero. I oversee construction for the city of Bridgeport. As far as the busing goes, I know we've had conversations about working on bus stops and just where all the students are coming from. So realistically, that's up to the bus company to try to figure out the flow of traffic. We do have an entranceway. We have two actually, one through Lafayette and one through Broad Street. So it's just trying to take to alleviate some of the traffic, and it depends on what, you know, route and how they're going to use those entrances. So I don't really want to speak on behalf of the bus company because we don't really call that out.
we did talk to the bus company, et cetera, and they change routes continually.
Yeah, we
And,
expressed concern, but that's really all we can do right now. And I think it's still kind of premature because we're trying to figure out where all these students are exactly coming from to create these bus routes.
So exactly the date of completing the new Bassic High School is what they, you know, you said 2025.
August 2025. Yep. So they expect, oh, go ahead.
And they do use passes with the bus.
Oh, GPA,
Yeah.
you know, our program with them as well. So as far as completion, it's August of 2025. The expectation is that teachers get in there ahead of time to be able to set up their rooms and then so forth and like that. The kids can come in and hopefully it's flawless. Hopefully.
No more question.
Thank you, Mr. Benahan. Let the record reflect that Board Chair Christine Baptiste Perez has entered into the meeting in person. Ms. Bain has a question.
Hi. Okay, so you was talking about the school bus. It's up to them to control traffic as to going in and out. Is there any regulations that we can put on them to help with the process?
I would kind of hope so. So I think that needs to be a conversation we all need to have. And of course, I look at PJ because that's my go-to friend that usually. And we can kind of express, obviously, we know it's a very trafficky area down there. So we would try to give you guys alternate routes to hopefully be imposed on the bus company. But I don't really know how the contract works. But I don't think, obviously we can't dictate that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, ma'am.
Let the record reflect that Board Member Mr. Robert Traber has entered the meeting in person. I'm going to do something different tonight that I haven't done since I've been chair. I'm going to give other board members an opportunity to ask one question at this point. One question. If you're interested. Mrs. Pavlovic?
Could I get my question to Mr. Albert Benahan? I'll probably be giving him more because I think when we get to the budget, I'm gonna have several questions.
Right. One question is nothing. You stable? Okay. Anybody else? Any other board members One question, Ms. Perez, Ms. Betsy Perez, no? Okay. All right,
Okay,
I think that we're all good so far.
excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I got that slide.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, guys.
So to sum that all up, I want to thank Larry and Michelle for their hard work. This was a trying project, as you all know. Took several years to get to where we are now. If you get a chance to ride by the site, you'll see the progress. To be where we are with the anticipation of 2 weeks ahead of schedule is monumental. There were a lot of challenges during this adventure that we've been on. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
I'm confused about whether there were community meetings surrounding the new Bassic High School. Some board members have told me that there were community meetings, and then some board members say they weren't. I just want to get clarity on that. Was the community involved in this process?
There were community meetings. There were some before I started, because Bassic had started in its new site before I got here. So I know there were community meetings. For any school construction program, we have to have the community involved. There's stakeholders here, and the intent is to make sure we hear their voice. So I know that there were in Bassic. Like to see more moving forward. As we get into Winthrop and we revitalize the school building program, it's important that we make sure that all the stakeholders are heard and we make them part of the process.
And a very important thing for me to ask is about the gym. There were a few community members that wanted to know, will the Bassic High School gym be CIAC regulated, compliant, whatever word you want to use, so that we can host championship games at Bassic?
Yes. So the documents that we have are regulation size court, so we can have tournaments and all that good stuff that we haven't been able to in other schools. The site allows for it. I know that Harding, we missed the mark a little bit, but we made sure we made it up in Bassic.
I'm sorry, can you please?
I tried to turn it off.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Benahan, any questions? for
Yes,
Mr. Garcia?
Mr. Garcia, you know how I am when it's about parents. Everybody know. And I know the plan I see is gonna be a nice parent group. And I know what I understand it's gonna be in the beginning, with your entrance, it's gonna be the main office, security, I believe it's gonna be the BDSO room, parent room, right?
I believe so.
So far, yeah.
When it comes to the naming of spaces, because of the way that we have to flow through the grant, we don't name the spaces, we number the spaces.
Okay, yeah.
But that's something, once you get to the programming piece of the project, then you can start labeling the individual spaces.
Okay, thank you.
They don't have.
I don't think I have any more either, Mr. Garcia. Are we ready to go on to the next?
This is the internship program.
Yes, the next item on the agenda would be the internship program.
All right.
Facilities Department Summer Internship Program Update.
So years ago, we used to have an internship program, about 8 to 10 students, Bridgeport students, and they'd go through the whole entire department. So they'd start with logistics, work their way through trade, spend some time in the front office. We end with interview prep and a resume. So being back now in my third year, and things are starting to slow down, believe it or not, now that we're tailing towards the end of ESSER, we want to revitalize that program. We met with Ms. Kastner. We had some lofty goals and wanting to bring it back in full force. But with everything going on and us closing ESSER out, we had to scale back just a bit, but we do have a program getting ready to kick off. We're working with the workplace and the career hub. They graciously are going to fund all of the positions. We're going to start with 4. They're all going to be Bridgeport students or graduates of Bridgeport, because they have to be between 16 and 18. They'll be working 4 hours a day with us. Same premise. They'll be working on logistics and trades. We've reached out to the trades union. They're going to come down. They're going to make sure that the students understand that there's a pathway with the trades. We're going to do the resume. We're going to do the interview prep, and they're going to spend time with all of the team members. So we're excited to have that up and running. Our goal is this year 4. We're going to also be bringing on 1 or 2 from the Career Hub, which is students have dropped out but are in their Career Hub program. The internship program for the summer will be a 5-week program for those students. The Career Hub program is a 12-month program that is funded through the workplace. So this is just another opportunity for us to start to build that pipeline for the future here in Bridgeport, because one of the things that we're seeing more and more is that it's very difficult to find staff members for the team. So if a student doesn't want to go to college but wants to start his career early, we can be there for them. And I think that's important. In our past internship programs, we have several students that are still with us. Several of them are running buildings right now. One of them went into carpentry, and we still write letters of recommendation, and we still get those phone calls. So it's a rewarding program. The team is excited. This effort is being led by Penny Lee, which most of you know as my personal assistant, who's a rock star, and Paul Washington, who's our manager of logistics. So they've taken on this program, and they've been working. We did meet with several candidates at a job fair early April at Housatonic. So we've identified the students. We identified 7. We're taking 4, and then now we're working to figure out the 12-month career hub folks that we're going to be bringing up. Any questions?
Mr. Benahan?
Question, I trust you, Mr. Garcia. I know you do an amazing job you're doing. You care about Bridgeport School and you care about us. So we appreciate your amazing hard work and your team too.
Can't do it without them.
I know.
Ms. Bain?
No, I think this is great. Thank you. I think it's a great collaboration with the workplace and the career hubs because they do great work and they actually have a program. I know about their programs, and this is going to be great for the students, and especially the ones that does not matriculate to, college or whatever, because this is not everyone is for college, right?
Yeah.
So then they also have like like vocations and stuff. So so I think this is awesome.
The program is really an amazing program. We spent some time. The 3 of us went down. We spent a couple hours with them. They're coming out with their certification for construction, OSHA 10, OSHA 30. They're given a laptop, basic tools to start their career, and a laptop. So these students, they're coming out. They were having issues in school, but they still want to come back and figure it out. So we want to make sure that we're part of that because we need to be there for them. So we intend on being.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Ms. Bain. I think that this is wonderful. We recognize that you had this program for years beforehand, but I'm just so super excited that it is relaunched. And thank you very much for the tour of this facilities department. It was great, and we trust you, Mr. Garcia. And I'm just so excited to see what happens with it. And again, like I told you before, if there's anything that I can do to help out with it, I would love to.
We're going to be looking for funders for next year. So we understand that we have the partnership, but we want to bring on more students. We'd like to find some funders that may be able to help us with that. We don't want to put the burden on the district. We got to find creative ways. And our doors are always open for tours. So if anyone wants to tour the facility, feel free to reach out. Several board members have come down, and we'd love to give you a tour to show you how we operate, what we do, and the level of expertise that all of the staff bring to the district.
Okay.
Like a tour.
And we'll set one up.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I have a little sneaker because it's a big.
It's a
Yeah.
Any board members have one question for Mr. Garcia? Mr. Collins?
Yes, I trust you as well, Mr. Garcia, but this question might not sound like it.
Okay.
Will the process be transparent enough in the selection of the students to avoid the appearance of nepotism?
Absolutely. Right now, we're working with the workplace. They had a job fair, and it was open to all of the candidates at the job fair. We didn't have many. I think we had about a dozen that came through and interviewed. I wasn't part of the interviews. I was there for the beginning of the programming. But Penny Lee and Paul Washington did all of the interviewing. I trust them intimately, and I'm sure that everything was done with the utmost respect.
Great.
Any other board member? Patsy Perez.
My question is, if I'm a student or a recent alum that do the summer program, am I still qualified for the 12-month program?
The 12-month program is 2 different things. So the 12-month program are the students that have left the school district for whatever, and they're now working on their GED. So they have this program completely wrapping them with services, helping them out in different aspects of different careers. So we're going to work with 2 of them because we feel that there's value there. And we always try to save a couple jobs at the end of this. And, if there's a candidate that makes sense, we offer them the job. But yes, it's a dual path. It's the ones that are still in school, which are the 5-week And then the ones that are out of school, that are the 12 month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, I'm sorry, Mr. Tracy.
How did people find out about this?
This was promoted by the workplace. So there were hundreds of folks. There were several companies there
At the job?
at the job fair. Yep. And then they invited us down to get a little acclimated with the career hub piece of it. And we just saw the value in that. It was supposed to be a half an hour, we were there for 2. But we got to literally talk to the students there and get to understand, what they want out of life. And, sometimes you just got crossed up in the wrong thing and next thing you know, but this is a program that's helping them get back in line. So we're all for it.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Okay, our next item on the agenda would be the school closures update. Yeah, you can have it. Go on in. Who's doing the school closures update? Dr. Levy?
Probably me.
Okay, we're ready for you?
Yes. Well, I'm here to report that we are that much closer to finalizing
Excuse me.
an agreement with the firm that will support us with this process. And once we finalize that agreement, we will come back with a more comprehensive report that will indicate the next steps and timelines for the process of actually doing the work of evaluating all of our facilities and all of the other steps that will go along with that process.
Okay.
Yes, we have to collaborate with the agency in that work. And so I don't want to set dates that then won't work.
Right.
So once we finalize the contract, we'll be able to set the timelines and the dates and the scope of the work and how it's going to unfold and share that with the entire community.
Okay. Ms. Bain, I'll let you go first. Any questions?
Not at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Benahan.
Questions?
I just have one, Dr. Levy David, the contract with the firm that we have, did you have like a pool of firms to choose from, or is it just like a specialized thing where just a handful of firms do this?
Well, there's a couple of ways to do the work. One is to issue an RFP, request proposals, and everybody gets to bid. We actually use the state, provider site where they already have approved vendors. And we chose one of the vendors from that site that we've actually collaborated with before in the district and other projects.
Okay. This is such a hot topic. I was going to let the rest of the board know that you will be allowed to ask 2 questions instead of 1 to Dr. Levy David about the school closures update. Who would like to go first? Mrs. Chapalovic.
Yes, as this is being paid for the city and I understand the RFP processes and all this, are we still going to have, we had discussed having the board members having input on how the study's going to be carried out and some criteria that we wanted to make sure that was good for the school system, because as I understand it right now, the city is in the catbird seat because they're paying and we've got a lot of mistakes. They are our buildings. Maybe some things that we need to study that the city is not accustomed to studying their normal facilities.
Yes, once we finalize the contract, we'll have several meetings with several different groups, including the board, so that we can go ahead and start planning the scope of the work and you can identify those priorities that the board wants to make sure are addressed. All of that will occur once we finalize the contract.
And are we looking beyond the 6 recommended schools to ensure those are the best?
Yes, we've asked them to conduct a comprehensive study. I'm sorry to have my back to the camera. A comprehensive study of all of our facilities. And that's going to include future planning for any additional facilities that we should identify due to their current state or any work that needs to be done in order to bring them up to code or to make their places safer for kids or whatever it is that their findings identify. And so I don't want to speak too much about that because that's a big question mark, right? Once they conduct that study, we'll be able to have more comprehensive information to then move forward.
That was the second one was really a follow-up. Timeline. We have a timeline of when,
We'll be establishing a timeline once we finalize the contract and we have our initial meeting.
as far as like finalization.
Correct. My understanding is that the process of evaluating, especially the number of facilities that we have, will take multiple months, up to 6 months, for that to be completed. So that was the initial estimate that we were provided with. I'm expecting that once we have our initial meetings, we'll be able to have a firmer response on the timeline.
Thank you.
Any other board members, questions about the school closure?
Oh, Mr. Tracy.
Yes, even if we have been almost there a couple of times, to elaborate as to why we're almost there, still, what's holding it up?
The contracting process takes a while. It's not a delay on their side or our side. It's just, we have attorneys, they have attorneys. And any contract of this magnitude and the amount of funding that's involved takes a lot of time.
Yes, Mr. McNeil.
Thank you. I don't know if I understood the question coming from Mr. Callaway, but I have the question. So as far as the contract, you're saying that the contract's still being finalized. Do we have a timeline on when that contract's going to be finalized? That way we know when we're going to start meeting. That's what I'm wondering.
I signed the contract today. So now it goes back to their attorneys and hopefully we'll be able to finalize it as soon as they're done with their final review.
We haven't been meeting with the firm, we're not right now.
I'm not releasing it until everything has been sealed and finished.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board? Mr. Benjamin?
No, okay, thank you.
Ms. Bain?
No, thank you.
This question might be better suited for Mr. Garcia, but Ms. Garcia, I was talking to a board member over the weekend, and she told me that, I don't know how to put this in your terms, intelligent terms, I'm just gonna say how I understand it, right? So she was telling me that the city of Bridgeport is shelling out money for buildings, repairs, whatever it is, and the state is supposed to reimburse the city, but the state hasn't reimbursed them, or they're taking a look. Yeah, can you please explain that?
So that's the Bassic program. So as everyone knows, there's been some turbulence in the DAS department up in the state.
What's DAS?
Department of Administrative Services.
Thank you.
So there was someone that got wrapped up in some corruption. So that has changed the dynamic of the work that happens through DAS. Several grants run through DAS, school construction runs through DAS. I have spoke to the board in the past about our inability to file for the HVAC grant round 2 because of the way that they've made all these changes in the vacuum. So within all of that, you've got the school construction grant funding. So the city has money, cash flow that they put up, and then, you start to fold into where the state catches up and starts to give you your reimbursements. Well, the state hasn't given reimbursements in some time now. So the city now is putting up all of the funding for the project. So I know that there was concern that the project would have to stop due to the funding, but the city's not going to stop now. Our intent in collaboration with the city is to continue to forge forward to get this project done on time. So I don't see any red flags at this point. If there is anything that comes up, the superintendent will be the first phone call. But right now, I know Mr. Banahan is on the committee and Ms. Perez. We talked through it. Ken Flato is alarmed because he should be. He's the finance manager there. But we're in okay situation right now, and the state should be catching up. We're following up every single day to make sure that they start to get that funding in place and start to get things into the practice that we're used to.
Yeah, because that was gonna be my next question. Like, is there anything that we can do to help facilitate? But I understand what you just said before. It makes sense.
The team is on it. One thing I say about the construction team, they're very good at what they do, and they're on it. So phone calls are made every day. We follow up with emails to make sure we have all of the communications in case we need them. But we know that it's just a logistical error up there with the new leadership and how they're moving, I get it. So we're working with them, and the city is gracious enough to continue to fund it and keep moving.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. All right, and so our last item on the agenda is state and city finalized budget update. Would that be Ms. St. Louis or you, Dr. Levy David? St. Louis? Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Madam
Chair, board members. Dr. Levy David, thank you for allowing me to present our budget gap plan this evening. Last week, the city council members had approved the mayor's proposal for a $3 million increase in the city's contribution to the Board of Ed, bringing our city contribution from 75.5 million to 70. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. To a city contribution of 78.5 million for fiscal year 25. According to the budget timetable provided by OPM, on May 28th is the last day for the mayor to veto the city council's general fund budget. And on June 4th, it's the last day for city council to vote on the mayor's veto of the city's council general fund budget. So it's subject to the mayor's approval. And in February, Governor Lamont, he had proposed a $9.2 million increase in ECS over fiscal year 24. And this $9.3 million, excuse me, this $9.3 million in increase in state alliance funds is subject to the governor's signing. So the change that happened in May when the General Assembly passed the House bill was that they reintroduced the magnet tuition and agri-science phase out. We're expecting a 58% cap on tuition expense next year, and this will result in approximately $700,000 in savings. This magnet tuition phase out, we had already included in the budget presentation because this magnet phase out was proposed back prior to us preparing our budget. So we had already known about the phase out, and Governor Lamont had not included the phase out in his proposed budget, but the House bill does include it back. So it doesn't make much of a change. Also, to the $9.3 million increase that we're receiving in Alliance Fund, we have to set aside a percentage, which we're projecting about 5%. We have to set aside for an educator diversity grant. So this will result in approximately $470,000 that we'll have to set aside. So there's two sides. So we're paying magnet tuition and we're receiving magnet tuition. So the cap in our expense, what we're estimating for 24 is $1.7 million in magnet tuition and agri-science tuition. We have that savings, and then we also have where we're going to receive less funding from the other schools that are paying us magnet tuition. From our understanding of the bill, we're going to be made whole. So we will not lose any funding as a result of the magnet tuition phase out. The state will make sure that each district is made whole. So we will receive 50%, 58% of the revenue, and that 42% loss will be compensated by the state. Next slide, please. So altogether, we're expecting an increase in our operating revenue for fiscal year 25 of $12 million. This is $12.9 million lower than what we had requested. We had requested $16.7 million from the city. They provided us with $3 million. So we received $13.7 million less than what we had requested. Altogether, this nets to the $12.9 million difference in our revenues, which we will have to withdraw from our reserves. So we are looking at, and during the budget presentation, we had mentioned that we would be withdrawing $12.8 million in reserves. We will have to withdraw an additional $12.9 million. So this will result in a $26 million estimated withdrawal in 2025. Thank you. Okay, so based on the most recent updates, we're expecting $11.8 million in funding in 25 over 24. This will be approximately $280 million in operating revenue, of which the city will fund 28.1%, and the state funding is 72% of our revenues. We will have a 4.4% increase in operating revenue from fiscal year 24 to 25. Next slide, please.
Can you repeat that last part again, please?
Our percentage increase of operating revenue will be 4.4% FY25. When looking at the city's appropriated budget, the $3 million is higher than what we've received over the last several years, looking at our historical increases in city contributions. And this year, their percentage increase was 3.97% year over year. And on average, that was about 2.6%. So we received an average increase of about 2.6% over the last 10 years. Next slide. So given the ending of ESSER, to alleviate the districts in Connecticut, the state did allot a higher level of funding in ECS to assist the districts with the looming fiscal cliff. Although we're receiving $9.2 million from the state and $3 million from the city, fortunately, it's not enough to prevent the upcoming fiscal cliff, which we expect to occur in fiscal year 2026. Taking a look at the percentage of funding operating, we see a slight increase, a trend in a slight increase from the city, where their percentage increase 10 years ago, their percentage contribution was 25.4%, whereas next year the contribution will be 28.1%. This bar graph is a visual that shows that a very large percentage of our funding heavily relies on the state ECS funds. Next slide. When taking a look at our overall operating revenue growth, it is very minimal. The average growth over the past 10 years has been 1.56%. The growth rate is insufficient to keep pace with escalating costs and educational needs. And This is all after taking into account the district's focused efforts on cost control. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of our gap plan. We have an operating gap of, of $41 million, but we will be receiving only approximately $12 million of additional funding. So after what we're estimating to be $3.5 million in savings from attrition turnover, we're forecasting an estimated $26 million withdrawal from our ISF reserves. Next slide, please. Based on our most recent forecast, which we produced in May, we're currently estimating a shortfall in the current fiscal year of somewhere between $6 to $8 million. We have a $7 million estimate, but it can, the year's not over yet, so we're estimating somewhere between $6 to $8 million. We currently have $36 million on reserves, and we're expecting that in the beginning of fiscal year 25, we'll have about $31 million, a little less than $31 million.
Yeah, yeah, we can go on. I'm sorry.
We have $36 million at the $36.6 million at this current time. At the end of this fiscal year, we're estimating that we'll have $30.6 million due to the shortfall in fiscal year 24, our current year, of $7 million. This will leave us with only $4.5 million in fiscal year 26 to rely on. So it is projected that the operating budget gap will reemerge due to historical underfunding in the Bridgeport operating budget in fiscal year 25-26. And due to the absorption of mandated ESSER fund services and the depletion of the accumulated savings in ESSER funds. The insufficiency of revenue growth in each year results in a higher compounded monetary need each successive year. Based on the current projections, without an acceleration of revenue growth, 25-26 will be the year in which the operating gap will reemerge, creating the conditions for a shortfall in revenue for operational services. At this current time, we don't as yet have a clear picture on our state and federal grants. The pass-through grant appropriations have not yet been received from the state. And so they're going to be expected to be known over the next few months. And as I had mentioned earlier in the presentation, the alliance, the state alliance and the city fund budget appropriations are not yet finalized. And we will provide a full budget update with a clearer picture in October 2024. That ends my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you, Ms. St. Louis. Questions, Mr. Benahan?
Yes, it's not a question, but it's a comment, and be sure for the record. This is why sometimes us, the board members in community and superintendent, we get stressed because they have the nerve, and I'm going to say it very clear. City council have the nerve that the board of education, you don't know what to do, what we do with the money. And then they say, oh, we care about the student of Bridgeport. If this is the way they care, we do. I know Dr. Kamala David, us as a board member, we meeting, we talk to them, we send an email, we go hard for it. We show them everything, prove where the money go, how to do it, how to spend it. And this is the way they care. You know, it's sad, it made me angry too, because, you know, we want the best for our students, we want the best for our staff, we want the best for our community. But I don't want to hear they say, oh, for education, they don't know what to do with the money, because they have the nerve to tell me. They have the nerve to say that in the meetings. Oh, for education, they don't know how to do with them. Hello, we invite you. Dr. Camila invited. Dr. Camila gave a report so many times. And it's in black and white. So you cannot say we don't know what we do with the money. But now I want the community parent to understand it's not us. We try the best. It's the city. They don't care about our students. Sorry, my reaction, but you know, we care. We're here because we care about students. We want the best for our staff to be sure they educate our children. So I just want to say that for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Ms. Bain.
Now it's just time.
Yeah, I am. She just said that she was having any questions and she's a little baffled right now, and so am I. I think we all are as a board. The internal savings fund. Can you explain a little bit about how that works as far as withdrawing money from it? Because I'm told that you can only withdraw once, and that didn't make any sense to me, so.
Mentioning that, actually, I forgot to highlight that. We have to keep, last city appropriation meeting, it was recommended by the OPM director and the finance director that we would have to keep a balance somewhere closer to 5 million, where we had estimated 2 million that we would keep on hand.
So 5 million has to stay in the internal
Right,
service, okay?
right. So that balance that we're seeing on September 1st, 25, we would not be able to touch it. It has to stay on hand, just in case there's a shortfall in the ISF fund.
My next question is for Dr. Levy David. Can you just give us some examples of what are we doing to save money, to stop the bleeding, quote unquote? What kinds of things are we doing to save money in this district right now?
Absolutely. And not just right now, we actually began this process many months ago to do an in-depth study of the funding, access, and egress, the way that it was spent, the areas where we were doing the most spending and why, and ways that we could actually increase our efficiencies with spending. And so currently, we have identified many areas when it comes to instructional resources where we can save a great deal of money. And I know that I mentioned in the last meeting that we found cases of unused instructional materials that were purchased with ARP ESSER funding. Do you remember the total number of the millions of dollars we received in ARP ESSER?
It was over 100 million, but I don't remember the exact amount. Over 100 million.
I thought it was closer to $200 million we received in ARP ESSER funding. And there were a lot of items that were purchased and never implemented.
We know why they weren't implemented.
I am the 5th superintendent in 6 years. So 7 years. So I am sure that interruptions in leadership had a lot to do with, here is the vision, here are the priorities, superintendent's gone. New superintendent comes in, different vision, different priorities. Maybe I don't like those materials. Maybe those aren't materials I'm familiar with. So there are a lot of different reasons why that could happen. Rapid turnover in teaching staff, rapid turnover in administrative staff. We are the rapid turnover school district. We train them and other districts recruit them. So one of the other pieces that we are working on is equitable staffing in order to make work culture and workload better for all of our employees. One of the things that everyone has talked to me about has been the student to teacher ratio and the way that we staff our classrooms across the district. It's not equitable. We don't staff based on the needs of the school or based on the level of challenge and issues that are apparent in the school. Everybody gets the same no matter what. And that is not a formula for success. That is not the way that it has been done in the last 10 years in successful school districts. And so those are things that we now have to actualize and modernize in Bridgeport in order to stay with the trends that actually help to improve our retention of quality staff and also our ability to ensure that the systems that we build are scalable and sustainable, even if there's a change in leadership, even if there's a change in teaching staff. And we just simply have not invested in those measures in the last decade and a half in Bridgeport. So those are pieces that we're beginning to work on now. In addition to that, we're increasing our grant sourcing. We're not sitting static waiting for the federal government or the state to offer us grants. We've hired a grant writer whose job it is to seek, write, and obtain grants for the district. Because of the type of city, very diverse, lots of different economic levels, multilingual, special needs, we qualify for everything. But we have simply not been competing for very substantial educational grants at the state and federal level. So we're going to be competing for those grants now and sourcing a lot of those grants in the district. In addition to that, we have developed some very, very incredible efficiencies for special education in order to decrease our special education costs while providing better services to our students than what they've been receiving in special education over the past 20 years. And we've also began the process of working to improve our transportation efficiencies, because that's another area where year after year, the costs continue to increase. So those are just a few of the areas where we've identified substantial savings in excess of $10 million, all combined, so that we can begin the process, as I've mentioned many months repeatedly, to right-size our district for the resources that we have historically had access to. During the area of COVID, the COVID era, the one benefit that I can see is that we were able to actually have and develop a savings. Prior to COVID, we had not had a significant savings beyond what was legally required, that $5 million. I don't know what the number was at that time, but that really was the only savings that we had as a result of all of the expenditures. COVID allowed us to use resources differently so that we could have savings in our general fund. There's an impression throughout the community, and I think also in institutional levels, that there's been a great deal of mismanagement of the funds that have been allocated to the Board of Ed. And I have been working very diligently to dispel the notion that there's been any deliberate mismanagement. The biggest hurdle to any system in being financially stable is leadership and stability. That is the single most significant factor. School districts, and this is demonstrated by research, school districts that have constant superintendent turnover will have higher rates of chronic absenteeism, higher rates of student failure, higher rates of financial insufficiency, and higher rates of attrition with their staff. We have to begin by right-sizing and stabilizing the way that we do organizational leadership in Bridgeport, the way that we use the resources that we already have, the way that we use the funds that we are given differently, so that we are not constantly in a spending and rescue mode that has been the culture of Bridgeport for the last 20 years. And so those are the conversations that I'm having at the state level with our governor, with Senator Blumenthal, with our city delegation, and also with our mayor, so that they understand that it's a new era in Bridgeport, that this is not the Bridgeport of old, that we have a very dedicated, very passionate group of educators, board members, and city leaders that want this district to succeed. We have parents who are rooting for us to win and rooting for us to succeed, because that they know that that means that their children will receive a great education. And so these systems that we're putting in place are going to ensure that we can stabilize and actually lead this district to a completely new era of stability for the next 10 years. I have committed to being in this district for a decade. I don't know of any other superintendent who would make that type of commitment, because it's simply too easy to go elsewhere where there are fewer complications and the pay is probably better. But for me, I'm very passionate. I was passionate from day one when I saw the history of this district, when I saw the data in this district. And as I've told everyone, Bridgeport reminds me of home. When I'm able to go to El Coquito and place my orders in Spanish for dinner for my family, I can only do that in Bridgeport. I walk in and I say, por favor, un sancocho con todo.
Bigger.
And there's no need for translation. There are very few cities where you can do that. Very few cities where you can speak multiple languages all at once. We are richer because of our diversity. Now we need to be richer in the educational quality that we offer the children of this city so that we can truly transform this into one of the most beautiful and prosperous cities in the state of Connecticut. And I firmly believe that we can do that. I have recruited the incredible talent that we have in the district right now. And I want people to know that I don't intend to go anywhere. I love it here. I love the people here. And I believe that this work is attainable. Each of the individuals sitting behind me have done this work, either here or in other states. We know the process of transforming school systems into being successful, solvent school systems. We just need the opportunity to do the work.
One more quick, Mr. Benahan, anything else?
Thank you, Dr. Camila, and I want you to add that you're not by yourself. You had 9 more members that be working with you because we want the best for our children. Thank you for that.
Ms. Banks?
I agree with Mr. Benahan.
I agree with Mr. Benahan as well. One quick question, a capital campaign. We are tight with money, I understand, but is a feasibility study worth exploring? Is a capital campaign worth exploring?
A capital campaign is always worthy of exploration. At this particular time, I think it would be definitely to our benefit to consider having a capital study done. I don't pretend to have every answer with finance, neither does Ms. St. Louis with all her expertise. There are a lot of areas. I mean, I know, and everybody who has their taxes done, you know this. We think we know all the tricks. And then we go see an expert and they find all these extra savings, right? So it's always a good idea to do a capital study. What I would caution is the amount of investment that we're going to make in a capital study right now, when we already have identified specific areas where we can have significant savings in the district.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, going great. Board members, who would like to ask the first question? Mr. Sakala.
Yes, I want to address the internal service fund. First, I want to make a bit of a statement on what you were told by the city. Board of Education's money is the Board of Education. The Bridgeport Public Schools money is Bridgeport Public Schools money to be governed through the. Now, the city does have an 8% of the amount that they're supposed to keep by charter. That charter does not apply to board funds. Once the funds are allocated to us by the state, you can follow up on this if you want with somebody. It's our money to do what we please. There's current legislation, I believe that just passed, that allows us to hold our own internal service fund. If we can follow up on that, I would appreciate getting that money out of the city hands because they tried to say it wasn't even ours at some point. And as far as the internal service fund, I don't actually disagree with their premise of holding. I think it would be probably a little bit more responsible to hold at least 10. But that does mean cuts. And as far as the 25, 26 reckoning that you're talking about, we are still going to have a $42 million need that we got this year, plus the escalating costs about $10 million or so, roundabout. So it's like $52 million need. And this year we're getting 13, so we could anticipate there about $39 million of shortfall if things remain the same. And that's a lot.
It's difficult to know because we don't know what our funding will look like in 26.
But if nothing changes, if we don't advocate for one more dollar, 1 more cent, if we don't cut costs, if everything remains the same, and assuming there's only about $13 million extra cash, that's going to be our deficit. And I believe we gotta stop preparing for the worst and hope for the best. Because I do not want to get into an emergency situation where we gotta close more than 6. That's a big number. I've been through the last round of cuts from 2016 to 2019. Probably fell down by like $10 million combined. Those cuts were already made. We can't make them twice. So everything we're cutting is going to be to the bone. This is scaring the crap out of me. Can't sleep at night thinking about this. I've been seeing this coming for years and years and years. Our children are already doing without. So we definitely need to start getting ahead of this now. We got to start 25, 26 plan for cuts now. Maybe we should do a couple of, if we're $20 million short, if we're $30 million short. If there's a miracle and we get an extra $10 million, what will we spend on? That's all.
Okay, other board members? Mr. Woodson?
Just want to let everybody know, it's not only the first board that's going through this. Norwalk, and Milford. I don't know why.
Hartford.
Hartford. I don't know why we all ain't coming together with the other districts, marching up to Hartford, donating extra money. First board is just on the lower end, but we're not the only ones.
Mr. Traylor?
Hey, what Andre said is true. This is a statewide problem. We're actually in better shape in the sense that we have aimed our savings so that we aren't hitting the cliff this year. Some districts are hitting the cliff this year. We're not, because we had this money in our savings, in our reserve fund. Hartford is deceptive. If you read the most recent article about it, looked like 300 or 400 layoffs. It's really not. If you read the most recent, but Danbury, lots of the cities, as Mr. Woodson said. It's a serious problem, and hopefully in the next legislative session, which is a long session, where the guardrails are less, constrained, we'll see more money flowing from the state, and that will help us address it. We'll have more resources available to us. Because if not, we do face a serious problem. The shortcoming that we looked at this year, plus the increased costs that we looked at this year, which is $10 to $15 million of just rising costs of salaries and benefits and insurance and electricity and all that stuff. So we will face that again. So I think you're right. I think that we need to see it addressed the way you said, which is collectively with the other communities that are similarly stressed. And that's where people say, and God help us for having to say this, that COVID was a blessing in one sense. We were all given this additional federal money. I did want to ask a couple of questions about your presentation. You looked at federal and state money. You did not mention any federal money. Is there no federal money coming in anymore?
We do have federal grants, but those funds have not been determined as of yet. We will know later in the.
I understood that. I understood there might be more, but you anticipate none? Anticipate
Yes,
some?
we have,
How significant has it been over the last few years?
I don't know what the numbers were last year. I can get those numbers for you.
Because the way your chart reads, you've got city and state.
Mhm.
The city's giving us 0.7%, the state's giving us 0.86. And
We do receive funding from the federal government through the
I
state,
know we do. That's why I'm sorry, it's rhetorical in the sense that
but those numbers, I can find out if you want to know what number.
Yeah, I just-
Yeah, for the current year.
looking at the whole pie, if you will, there's got to be a part of that state reflects the state monies too, beyond what Dr. Levy Debbie just suggested we would be seeking to increase through the grants that we'll be hopefully pulling in over the next year.
Ms. St. Louis, can you send us all a copy of that if you don't mind?
Yeah, I will need this from and,
What, your last question, Mr. Trevor?
oh, this is the.
Yeah.
Um,
While you look for it, I have a question if you don't
Go
mind.
ahead. Don't know.
Yeah, Mr. Benita.
Just to give them time. If I'm correct with Ms. Superintendent, you mentioned that you've found in search, it is about $10 million in savings that you've seen by cutting things. Is,
Not by necessarily cutting,
No, no, no,
by
by
using our
looking-
resources differently.
exactly. So you have that saving. Has that been put into the budget that you
No.
said before, or
No,
what
that-
we're doing with that savings?
That is not included in the budget at this time because I'm still waiting on all of the final pieces that are going to come together from the city and the state. And those are pieces that we're going to actually work on together. So that's something that we're going to actually work with the board and work with those impacted stakeholders together.
So having that said, so it's possible that we won't have to take so much out of our ISF fund? If that all works out, pans out together?
The pieces that I'm talking about, I am identifying those pieces in order to support us in 2026, when it's going to be needed the most.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trevor, are you ready?
Yes, so, I guess that I would just say two things. One, with regard to what I heard at CADE last week, there is a new piece of legislation that was passed that allows us greater autonomy with regard to the ISF and what we do with it, our control of it, and how much. So I would look at that. And I understood what Mr. Skolovic was saying about the city not having anything to do with our money, but there was a bill passed that allows us a greater degree of autonomy with regard to what we can do with the ISF money. So it's worth looking at with regard to our projected planning in the future. And I do agree that, you know, whether it's 2 million or 5 million, that's not enough to have a proper budget, proper buffer in the event of emergencies, catastrophic needs, which is a district with a budget of 300 plus million. And then I guess the second question would be, the second question then would be, so the areas that you've identified are not savings that we are going to see this year.
Those are not savings that I'm including in this year's budget because I am still currently working to identify additional areas.
But
And I want to reserve those savings. We're going to begin that process this year, but I want to really reserve those savings for 2026.
can you give us some ideas of what those areas are, though?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, give you a little bit of a recap. The first is going to be in the way that we use and identify instructional resources. There's some instructional resources where we have a high level of usage. There are others where we have zero usage, where we don't have students using them at all. And there are ways to cancel or end those contracts early so that we don't continue to pay on resources we're not using. And that's why it's so critical to look at the data. Also, the equitable staffing piece is really critical. When we don't staff buildings based on need, we have greater incidences of vandalism, greater incidences of chronic absenteeism, bullying, because we're not staffing based on the needs of the particular schools. And so we want to make sure that we're looking very strategically at what the actual needs are for each of our schools before we allocate staffing. So everyone is not going to get the same number, say, of paraprofessionals or assistants based if they don't need that number of paraprofessionals in their building. If the greater need is in a school that has students that need additional instructional support
additional supervision, you staff that strategically. It helps to reduce the number of substitutes that you need over time because you have fewer incidences of people going on long-term absence, or what is it called? FMLA, thank you. So by staffing strategically, you help to reduce the pressure that we have on our current staff, which makes their work culture, it makes their work culture more positive. It makes it more sustainable, and it reduces the incidences of injuries that we have in our schools. And so those are the pieces that we're looking at. And those are pieces that you really have to study the data and really have those very personal anecdotal conversations with school leaders in order to determine how that staffing works for those particular schools. In addition, one of the things that has kept us back from real savings over time in the district is the fact that we have K-8 elementary schools. We don't have true middle schools. So we're not serving the academic needs of students in grades 6, 7, and 8. They're not being prepared for high school level courses. They're not being provided with credit-bearing courses in middle school, which makes the burden of that transition that much higher for students, and it makes the likelihood of failure repeating trailer courses, all which cost money. Trailer courses when you have to offer the first semester of something in the second semester. So when students are not ready to transition to Algebra 1 because they haven't had enough access to algebraic concepts in elementary, and they take Algebra 1 for the first time in high school, and it's a brand new learning concept, and maybe they have gaps, there's a higher likelihood of students not being successful. And when we don't have already interventionists and able to offer that on-site tutoring, over time, we're spending more money by having to reschedule a course again in the spring. And now those students are out of sync with their actual grade level peers that will be graduating on time unless they go to summer school, which is an additional cost. And on and on and on it goes. When we make choices that don't modernize the way that we deliver education, it's much more expensive over time for the entire system. Does that help? And the other piece is grant sourcing. We have grant managers in the district. We don't have grant writers. We don't pursue, write, or compete for grants. The only department that currently competes for grants is facilities. Mr. George Garcia's department.
They're my team, they're the best.
Thank you. And so I really appreciate their initiative in actually seeking federal and state grants and capital grants for our projects, because if they weren't doing that, our expenses would be so much higher with all of the repairs and maintenance that they have to do on a yearly basis. Our goal is to begin actually pursuing those competitive grants that have been available for 30, 50 years.
You know when that stopped?
Well, we haven't had a grant writer, a formal grant writer in the district in the last decade. The only people writing grants are in facilities. So unfortunately, when we don't take those steps, those proactive steps to seek funding that's already available and that we can compete for and that we qualify for based on our needs and based on the populations that we serve in Bridgeport, we're like cutting off our nose to spite our face. Is that the same? I'm a second language speaker, so I get these wrong. So it makes it more difficult for us to access funding that is readily available. All we have to do is really apply for it. And the other piece is really restructuring how we deliver special education. The culture in this district has been that if a student is difficult, we send them to an out-of-district placement. We are spending this past year $98 million. That is a third of our budget comprehensively with all of the special education services that we deliver. And a big chunk of that is out-of-district placements. We pay between $100,000 to up to $1.5 million per placement for a student with an agency who is not in our district receiving services that we could provide. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to provide ongoing training, capacitation, ensuring that everybody's CPI trained, ensuring that we have the greatest de-escalation strategies available, ensuring that we build confidence in our parents and our community and how we can serve divergent learners in the district so that the default isn't, if my child is struggling in Miss Susan's class, then I want an out-of-district placement, which is what is happening right now, and where our school district employees sometimes don't feel the capacity to push back on giving an out-of-district placement. But now that we have restructured the department, we've added capacity to the department and training throughout the district. Now we're in a position where we can go in and actually do studies, observations, and make recommendations, add resources, and support students and teachers differently so that we decrease the number of injuries that we have when students are not in the appropriate placement in the district. And then finally, the other piece is transportation. Over the past 10 to 15 years, our transportation costs have escalated to a point that is really staggering for me, coming from a district of 80,000. We're spending nearly as much as a district of 80,000 students on transportation. We have over 160 buses allocated only for special education, specifically students who are going to agencies outside of our city. They're going as far as New York to receive services. And I don't know if you guys buy gas, but I buy gas and it's really expensive. And when you have a truck that's either diesel or something else, it's going to be even worse. And so the insurances, the drivers that we have to hire, the schedules, the constant repairs on those buses with our contractor that we work with, those costs escalate annually. I'm not sure how much cheaper it is for us to have out of district contracted bus services versus having our own. We no longer manage buses in this district, and we have access to writing grants for energy efficient electric buses. And we would actually receive reimbursement for purchasing electric buses. So there are a lot of different steps that I think due to just the in and out of different leaders, we have not been able to explore in the district. I look forward to being here for a decade to not only explore them, but implement them as well.
And we're gonna move on. Any other board members have questions about the budget, the updated budget for Ms. St. Louis or the superintendent? Any other board member? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Make a motion to.
Moved by Mr. Minihan, seconded by, okay. It is now 7:27. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.